This podcast is not sponsored or supported by any business or organization. The views reflected on these podcast episodes are my own. Please be aware I am not a medical expert, travel agent, or any other kind of expert. Hey everyone! Welcome to the Eat, Explore, Love podcast. I'm Ashley. This podcast is based off of my blog of the same name, Eat, Explore, Love. It talks about the unique challenges in traveling around the world when you have celiac disease. Due to sort of popular demand, I decided to also record a podcast to delve a little deeper into my travels and the lessons learned along the way. On this episode of Eat, Explore, Love, the podcast, we are chatting with Amilynne Carroll, a certified spiritual development, religious trauma, and life coach. We go through some intense conversations about spirituality, religion, and what it means to be a student of life. If after hearing this conversation you are interested in working with Babs, please be sure to check out the link to her website in the show notes for this podcast episode. Once you get a moment to check out her website, you'll see we've only gotten to a fraction of Bab's life and what makes her so special. I hope you are equally as inspired as I am. Hello. I am so excited to be talking with you today, Babs. Welcome to Eat, Explore, Love, the podcast. You've already tugged at my heartstrings before we started this recording with all that you just said, those kind words. So welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you today.
Thank you for the invite. I am excited to be here with you and to share this space with your listeners, with your audience, for us to just all kind of come together in a heartfelt space with an open and honest conversation about whatever it is that shows up for us today. So thank you for the invite.
So, with all that said, I would love to hear. I've read up on you a little bit and I have my own understanding and perception of who you are, but I ask at the beginning of every conversation, who, in your own words, who are you and what brought us to this conversation? What led us to this conversation today in your journey?
Ooh, who am I? That's a really big question. And once I figure out the answer to that, I'll get back with you. Because I think so often each of us is I'm not unlike you, not unlike your listeners. I'm on that journey to find my identity and who I am and why I'm here today is that this conversation I am trusting is part of my own journey of unfolding and finding my own identity and learning to share our experiences, not in a way that will um, impose on another's experience, but might uplift or encourage or remind another of their strength and courage and boldness. So, for me, my life really isn't much different than everybody else's. Oftentimes I'll say that, I am a firm believer that our experiences form our our what happens in our life. It forms our experience, but it's not our identity.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, showing up today really is just affording me the opportunity to share some ideas in dialogue with you, Ashley, as your listeners show up either with questions or with a desire to escape. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll listen to podcast episodes because I know that there's other things I should be doing.
Yes.
And every time I do that, I learn a little bit more about myself. And so for whatever's bringing people today to listen to our conversation, I just want to invite them to let that be okay
I
and
love
let that be the reason they're showing up for themselves today.
And that is essentially the mission statement of our, especially our Friday episodes that we air. So that makes it extra special that we're chatting today. I read up on you that you work in spiritual development and work through that as a life coach. What does
Mhm.
that all mean to you?
Well, for me, I spent the first 35 years of my life with all of the expectations that society has on us. And I know nobody listening has ever felt that way. Look, I follow the rules. I do what's expected. I went to college. I got the degrees. I, started, had a successful career. And yet there was just this sense, a lacking sense of fulfillment.
Mm,
And I'd go to bed at night exhausted, but empty.
mm-hmm.
And so for me, this idea of, I, and I started out in the corporate world, like so many of us. And in 2015, I finally allowed myself to be honest about the fact that so much of the work I was doing in the financial services world was really helping people with their day-to-day struggles and challenges. And I loved doing that. And I really wanted to get out of the world of greed and money and all of that as well.
Yeah.
So for me, the work that I get to do, I kind of, you know, bring that down to my role, my purpose, my calling is to be for another what I wish had been present for me, sometimes in my darkest moments. And I do believe, after lots of soul searching, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so it matters not to me what faith background you may ascribe to, or you may be playing with, or running from. But what matters to me is that we have a safe place to ask questions about life. And for me, life is spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And so, look, I've had people come to me and they're like, yeah, I don't believe in God and I don't want to talk about God. And look, I honor that in you, but us working together isn't the right fit. Then let me help you find someone on your journey that can support your journey. Because if you don't have a willingness to incorporate spirituality and divine mind, divine idea, however you label it, into our discussions, into our work together, then I can't be helpful to you. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But to me, it's all about getting back to our spirit, our understanding that we are spiritual beings having a human experience.
I find your perspective on it and your story of what got you there so interesting because and this is not me with the intention of having a political discussion, actually, the exact opposite. But in the time that we're recording this, there's a lot of noise on the news about certain folks making certain statements about women and what they ought to be doing and should be doing and what should a potential role in society be. And I think that what you're doing is and your story is more vital and important than ever of the importance of living life fulfilled. And that answer is different for everybody, and
Yeah.
the respect for that. And I admire that you are respectful and that everybody comes at it from a different place. And if you're not the best fit for each other, that's fine, but you will still make sure that they get whatever they need. I always label myself when people ask me about religion, and in my time abroad, I actually went through a big, because I always just did the lazy thing of labeling myself as an atheist, right? And said, that's just who I am. And then and then I started feeling of, okay, well, clearly when I go and I'm abroad, there's a lot more churches that you just go into and you look and see. And I'm always respectful of it, and I do all the things that you're supposed to do, that I was taught. I was raised Catholic, and I even was a religion
Ooh.
teacher for people that were what the term now is neurodivergent. And obviously that I labeled myself an atheist at one point. I stepped away from that for a bit of time, but I was like, clearly there's a part of this that I still believe in and put my faith in and stock in and whatnot. And so I started labeling myself as spiritual as opposed to religious.
Mhm.
How does that what is your response to that, and how does that manifest for you with spirituality and making how do you sort that out in your head?
It's been a big conversation,
Mhm.
and it has raised, for me personally, tons of questions.
Mm.
So it's the work that I've done that I think allows me the grace to welcome others wherever they are.
Mhm.
And primarily, and again, it kind of goes back to that place of being for another what I wish I had been able to find in my most challenging or darkest moments, or however you want to say that. But there's this idea of to expect anyone to know the totality
Mhm.
and the fullness of what everything in life means. Wow, that's really heavy. And so for me, I grew up in a very rigid Christian household.
Okay.
We believed, I was taught, I won't say I believed, I was taught predestination.
Okay.
And oh, by the way, while there are a few chosen that are going to heaven, you are not one of them. But you still have to be a good person.
Yeah. Mhm.
I grew up in an environment where it was not okay to question.
Mm.
And I, the question for me wasn't about being rebellious or a maverick. I wanted to question to understand. And so what happened was a couple of things. I grew up learning about life from a place of borrowed belief.
Mhm. Yeah.
I also grew up in a place where labels were tantamount to my identity.
Mhm.
And so when life begins to show up for you very differently than how you've been raised, and now I'm in a space where I can ask questions. Sometimes we go to the opposite end of the spectrum and begin to question everything.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I began to question everything. And so for me, while the spiritual component is important, the way I now phrase it is I am a student of fill in the blank. Because the reality of it is, I'm not an expert on anything. I'm not even an expert on my own life. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But what I am is a student of life. And I might be a student of Christian Science, or I might be a student of Buddhism, or I might be a student of spirituality. But most importantly, what matters is that a student is one who asks questions.
Mm.
And I love the space of being able to ask questions. And I'm also learning in that space not to ask a question just to ask a question,
Right.
but to ask a question to open my own thought,
Mm.
to be open to an answer very different than what I think it might be or what it might look like. And if I can afford myself that grace, guess what? When someone else shows up in my life in a way I would prefer they did not, I can afford them more grace in the way I interact with them because I can recognize I've not always shown up in situations the way I would want to
Mm.
if I was more aware of how I was showing up. So it's that idea of being a student of,
Yeah.
because I think labels become so limiting, whether it be Catholic or Buddhist or atheist, like pick the label. I don't care what the label is, mother, daughter, son, male, female. Like there's so many, as you said, right now, the conversations in our society are so divisive.
Mhm.
And yet, if we allow ourselves to look at the core of what some of these conversations are, whether it be about gender identity or whether it be about the idea of neurodivergence, and that somehow is considered a lack
Mhm.
versus a benefit or a blessing.
Right.
I mean, I just use the example in that neurodivergent world is that so often, whether the label be autistic or,
Yeah.
Asperger's or whatever, it's like the creativity that the world experiences from individuals from that space is a creativity that we wouldn't be blessed with without this person's experience being very different than our own.
Yeah.
And different doesn't make it wrong. It simply makes it different. And the difference is the uniqueness. And that's what makes life beautiful and colorful and a tapestry, as opposed to boring and repetitive and redundant.
Yeah, to kind of go off that, my brother, he's 13 months younger than I, and he was diagnosed with autism when we were toddlers, and he's been my little twin that we do even today, everything that we do is together, and there was a time where there were studies that people believed that they could cure autism, and we as a family considered, do we do that? Do we put my brother through these trials, which weren't invasive to my understanding? It was a theory of like a part of the brain was just dark, and they would give these exercises, and that would turn that part of the brain back on again. And then, he's not autistic anymore, but I don't think anything came of that study. I don't think anything happened with that. But as I got older and look back on that time, I wouldn't want my brother to be any different than who he is. I say that with a lot of privilege in that my brother is high functioning. He tells us that he loves us. He gives me a hug. He loves to chat with me about theater. We get to watch him perform on a stage, but he has this kindness in his soul that is just unmatched by anybody else, and this innocence to him that whenever I'm with him, I just feel like life is better because he's in it, and I wouldn't want him to be any different. And I feel sorry for people that don't get to meet my brother because he is simply the best and don't
No.
understand him. But that
Well,
was on a tangent.
and yet in our, I'm sorry.
I know I was just saying sorry for that tangent, but thank you for giving me
No, I think it's a
talk
great tangent.
about him.
I don't think it's a tangent at all, because I think one of the things that we lose sight of is that a deep desire that each of us has is to be loved and accepted exactly as we are.
Yeah.
And yet, someone who shows up differently than us, we somehow show up differently for them.
Mhm.
And sometimes and I think that, I mean, there's a component of the unknown and, respect, not wanting to offend. But I think that more than anything, it comes from a place of fear.
Mm.
And and as you said, we miss out.
Yeah.
And yet all of this comes from a place of we want to be loved and accepted just as we are.
Yeah.
And yet our society is one such that we're taught that that's not how we are accepting of others.
Yeah. Yeah. I This is going to be a very deep conversation. I feel like where this is already going, and I'm loving every second of it. So, for you, using spiritual development, there is no specific religion that you are wanting to use in your life coaching of your clients or of whoever you work with. It's more about using all the teachings of all the religions. Is that how you work? How does it work as a process for you
Oh,
in
that's
your
a
life
great
coaching?
question. Um, in some regards, people would be like, "Oh, well, that's very Eastern religion, or that's very Western religion." And same as I've worked to remove the labels, not only that I put on myself, but that I project on others, is is to take off the header,
Mm,
to take off the expectation
mhm,
of, oh, well, this is Christian or this is Hindu.
right.
And part of this comes from a place of back in 2007, I undertook the task of beginning the process of questioning absolutely everything I believed. Everything
Yeah.
I believed. And what I came to realize is that my life operated not from a place of conditioned thinking or programmed thinking. And that's what mainstream would tell us, is that there are people out there that want to condition our thinking or that want to program us. And I think what happens really, if we remove all the labels, is that we operate from a place of borrowed belief,
Okay.
and that we think that one belief is right or wrong over another,
Right.
and that if it doesn't adhere to one philosophy, then it's wrong. We must adhere to one philosophy in order to be right, and if we don't, we are wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't think life is that way. I mean, not to take a complete plot, you know pivot change here, but like, there's 50 shades of gray,
Mm-hmm.
and those 50 shades of gray are the most amazing expressions of life.
Right.
But if we're not accepting of shade 34 or 16 or 28, what happens is that we actually diminish the voice of creativity. We diminish the voice of the divine being fully expressed. And we become who we rally against, in a space of, don't don't put me in a box.
Right.
And yet we operate from a place of not only putting ourselves in a box with a label,
Mm-hmm.
but putting those around us. And we like boxes because boxes denote right or wrong,
Right.
included or excluded. And yet that's not the way life is. We try to create divine order in the human experience.
Yeah.
And we try to ascribe human order to the divine experience. And guess what? We get disappointed at every turn, because there is a human and divine coincidence. I absolutely believe that. We're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to say that Islam is the only way, or Christianity is the only way. And look, I recognize that there are people in my life that feel very different than that,
Right.
but it works for me. And what I recognize and what matters to me is that regardless of what a person's life story is that when they are in my presence, whether it be physical or virtual, is that they feel accepted exactly where they are,
Right.
that they feel seen, that they feel safe
Yeah.
to talk about who they are and what their experiences are and what questions they're sitting in and what challenges they're showing up for.
Yeah.
And that we don't have to ascribe a response or an answer based on a philosophy, but that we get to travel together to find the answers that are meaningful and practical for you.
Right.
Because what works for me may not work for you.
Yeah.
And the idea that I would have answers for you, are you kidding me? I don't have answers for me.
Yeah.
But there's not any experience, in my opinion, that isn't made easier with a good travel partner there,
Yeah.
just along for the ride, to support, to uplift, to redirect sometimes,
Yeah.
but not someone there that is projecting an idea that something is broken and needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
No one's broken. No one needs to be fixed. We get to learn how to better understand ourselves and how we share ourselves with others. But no one is broken.
Yeah.
No one needs to be fixed. And that's awesome, because it takes that responsibility off my plate. I don't have to fix you because you're not broken.
Yeah. I love that. I also love your mentality on all of this, because that was part of my inner turmoil that I'm still working through. Of as I was traveling, I traveled 9 months throughout Europe, and during my travels I would take all these tours, and I looked at every single war that they spoke about. The basis of it was about religion, and that one religion was ultimately more right than, and they had to impose that belief and make sure everybody followed suit. And I can only think of one war where religion had no part in it, and that's the Cold War. And I'm happy for anybody to reach out to me and tell me that I'm wrong because I'm hoping that I'm wrong. But as far as my travels, every single time I heard a historical event, it was always, well, it was the Christians against the Protestants, or it was the Protestants against the whoever, and it was these folks against the Jewish people, and these people against Islam, and all these, and Islam against whoever. And it's just, I am incredible. It really put me more into the corner of where you're at, of, well, there cannot be simply just one right answer to all of this. And what if we just simply respected everybody going through this life, what however they need to get to the finish line? And I don't, no one knows what's at the finish line, what's beyond the finish line. It's, and that's also, I think, why I am gotten more faith based, because I was a little bit existentialist, and the thought of it all just going dark once you pass on was a little terrifying to me and made me afraid to live. So I needed the faith based of it and the spirituality portion of it, of, I don't know if there's a heaven or a hell, but I believe that the spirits of those that came before me are with me. And my mentor, she also believed in that, and she unfortunately passed away during COVID. And I
Mm.
I believe that she's with me all the time. Like every time my knee hurts, it's her. You know what I mean? Like that's how I have to process through life. But I appreciate your being a student of all these things and that perspective, because that's the truth of it all, is that we're all living life in theory for the first time, depending upon if you believe in past lives and all that other stuff. But our consciousness, this is the first time going through it. So we are all students. None of us are experts at living. So I
Right.
appreciate you saying that.
Well, and I think that is imperative. If we're going to have honest conversation and dialogue,
Hmm.
I think it is imperative that we understand the difference between a spiritual teaching
Hmm.
and a human agenda.
Yeah.
And history has taught us. So take religion out of it for just a moment.
Right.
But history has taught us that so much of what we have been taught about religion has a human agenda behind it.
Yeah.
And there's a myriad of different examples. For example, in the Catholic Church, paying penance for those who have already passed on, to be able to pay alms for someone who's passed on to ensure that they go to heaven, actually came from a place where the Catholic Church was facing bankruptcy,
Hmm.
a modern term to an ancient challenge. And so they needed cash flow.
Hmm.
Or in the Christian church, taking the Nicene Creed, where all of a sudden the idea of the Holy Trinity, like that, the idea of the Holy Trinity wasn't taught in the Christian Bible or the Jewish Torah or the Quran. Like, pick a scripture or a spiritual text. The idea of the Holy Trinity is not taught, is not revealed, is not demonstrated. And so it's, for me, it's imperative that we begin to separate the human agenda,
Yeah.
the culture, and the community
Yeah.
outside of a teaching, a principle, an idea. And what does that idea mean to you? And having those questions, it's like a big conversation in the spiritual slash religious world is, well, how do you feel about sin? Well, wait a minute. Original sin is not a spiritual idea. It's not even a Christian idea.
Hmm.
Because Genesis 1:1, like if we're going to go back to the textbook, which I consider the Bible a textbook, Genesis 1:1 says that we were all created in the perfect image and likeness of our Creator. Genesis 2, in my opinion, is the beginning story of man trying to work out his and her divinity, his or her relationship to God.
Hmm.
And so we began creating these stories about this guy named Adam and this gal named Eve, and how are they figuring out their identity and who they are and why they're here. I mean, think about it. All the way back in Genesis chapter 2, Adam and Eve are facing the question, who am I and why am I here?
Yeah.
And yet that first chapter tells us that we are here to be the expression of the divine, and that we were created in that perfect image and likeness. And so therefore, if we take the human words at the end of each day of creation in Genesis 1, what did God say according to man? It was good. And I was created in those first 7 days. You were created in those first 7 days. So our origin is good.
Right.
It is perfect, whole, and complete. That we stray from that in our misunderstanding,
Right.
in our skill level of living in this world,
Yeah.
doesn't mean we're any less perfect, whole, and complete. It just means we're a little divergent on it occasionally, and our skill level needs a little bit of help.
Yeah.
And that's what we get to do. We get to support our sisters, our brothers on their journey of strengthening that skill of understanding who and what they are. And it doesn't matter to me who and what you are, it matters to you who and what you are. And I don't get an opinion.
Right.
My job is to love you exactly where you're at. If for no other reason, is that's what I would like from you when
Right.
I show up in your space, is simply to be accepted, to not feel broken,
Yeah.
to not feel less than, to not feel like I need to put on a mask in order to receive your approval. But that how I am right here, right now is okay.
Yeah.
And okay is enough.
Yeah. That is, yes.
Yes.
I,
Yes.
yes, I love that. I know that we're running low on time, so I have one big question, and then I always end every episode with the same rapid fire questions, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
But my last big question for you is, we brought up the idea of fulfillment right at the beginning of this episode. How does one know if they are fulfilled? Because I struggle with that a lot.
I think that the big questions in life, we know the answer to.
Okay.
I think that for me, and this is a conversation I often have with myself,
Right.
is why am I doing something? Why am I showing up? Why is something important to me? And then asking the question, is that for external validation? Or
Mm,
is it because it's something I cannot not do?
right.
And that sense of that being able to recognize that space of I cannot not do this, that's fulfillment.
Yeah.
And fulfillment isn't about being happy all the time. Fulfillment is just knowing we're in our right place and the right lessons for us are showing up, and that we're showing up to receive those lessons.
Yeah.
Because every lesson brings a blessing. Every lesson. It's not an either or.
Hmm.
Well, it's either dark or it's light. The presence of darkness does not denote the absence of light. It simply is a reminder for us to look for the light in the darkness, because darkness cannot exist without the presence of light. It has no point of reference.
Yeah.
And so when we begin thinking about this idea of fulfillment, to me, that's an internal conversation.
Mm.
And if we get really quiet and we cast off, even for 30 seconds, the projections of others that we have accepted onto ourselves about what is good and what is right and what we are meant to be, we know what fulfillment feels like
Mm.
and how to stay in that space, which is really hard because we're humans.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's really hard. Nobody said it was going to be easy,
Right.
but it is absolutely possible.
You've given me a lot to reflect on, and I'm sure those that are listening are going to have to take a moment and uh, hopefully, when listening to this, like you said before, they will learn something new about themselves. Thank you Babs, for coming. Like I said before, have these couple of rapid fire questions. So
Shoot.
I'm going to ask those if that's okay.
Bring it on.
Perfect. What is, in your opinion, the city with the best food?
Ooh, the city with the best food would be whatever city I'm in, because I love food.
That's a
And I think each
different
city
answer.
has its own amazing thing to offer.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if I don't want to pigeonhole,
Yeah,
I'm going to be receptive to whatever's showing up and to see the beauty and the awesomeness in that. So whatever city I'm in.
love that. Do you prefer a vacation that requires you to be active or relax?
Ooh, I think a good balance of the two is important to, because if we're talking vacation,
Mm-hmm.
for me, vacation, I think about being refreshed and renewed. And if I'm doing one or the other,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm not meeting the need of part of my soul.
Right. Yeah,
So
totally.
I think there's a good balance to both.
Yes, I agree with you. And where is the city that you learned the most about yourself?
Ooh, I would say the city where I have learned the most about myself would be the city of love.
Which one? A lot of cities have that claim.
I think I think we're going to take it from a physical
Okay.
into a metaphysical,
Okay.
because I think that once we learn to show up for ourselves, it's kind of like the food. Where's the best food? What city has the best food? If we are willing to genuinely show up, we're going to learn about ourselves at every turn. And if we welcome that, that means we get to grow and expand in that same space. And that each place that we have resided will have a place of specialness and a space that's memorable and a space that is impactful for us.
Yeah.
And so, not to like not answer your questions, because now I don't feel like I answered any of your questions
No, you
directly.
just gave a different perspective on all of them, and that's what this is all
Yeah.
about. So that's perfect. I like the answers. Um, well, thank you so, like I said, you provided me different perspectives to so many things today, and I'm so appreciative of that. Oh, excuse me, just swallowed some air. That's fine. Thank, thank you so much for joining me. This was a lovely conversation.
I look forward to our next conversation, Ashley, and I look forward to listening to more of your episodes. And that's the thing I want to say to a listener. And whether you've listened to this podcast before or whether this is the first episode, look, I am an avid student of life,
Mhm.
and I so love your podcast.
Well, thank
There's
you.
something to be gained from each episode. And so I just really encourage
Thank
people and invite others, just go pick an episode. There's a reason it's going to resonate with you, and there's something that you can take away from it
thank
into
you.
your day-to-day life.
Thank you very much. I very much appreciate that, those kind words. And I'm sure this will not be the last conversation because we will have to be students of life together, right? Uh,
Absolutely. We're just here to walk each other home.
yes, yes, I love that. Thank you so much, Babs.
Thanks, Ashley. Take care, love.
Thank you so much for joining me. If you're looking to hear more conversations like this, please make sure to reach out at hieatexplorelove@gmail.com. I want this conversation to continue to grow and be bigger, better, because ultimately this podcast is one of the few episodes that reflects what my intentions were and the conversations I wanted to have for this podcast. So thank you so much to Babs for joining me, and thank you to all of you for listening. Please reach out to hieatexplorelove@gmail.com. Would love to hear your thoughts. Till next time. Thank you for joining me this week for all the fun journeys and lessons learned on my big adventure called life. For more information on the different cities discussed, check out the blog posts on hieatexplorelove.com, posted every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you have any questions or fun stories to share, feel free to reach out at hieatexplorelove@gmail.com. Until next week, remember to eat well, explore the world, and love yourself. See you next time. This episode is produced, scripted, and edited by me, Ashley. Special thanks to Sarah Mientka.